Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. And yes, I do have Crab Cake tour dates coming. We're going to be at Fadley's on Tuesday of next week, and then the following week at Costas. We're making our way through October, my birthday month. We'll hopefully have some lucky ones. Hopefully somebody wins 20 grand on one of my Raven scratch-offs. Luke Jones joins us now. We have this might be the end of the road for you and me, right? Like after the Ravens game, win or lose to the Chiefs. This might be our last baseball conversation of the regular season, and certainly the walk-off at Dylan Beavers. You were among the few and the faithful there on Thursday afternoon to watch the season come to an end. We did a lot of pitching earlier in the week about Rodgers and about Bradish, but and we beat up on a lot of the position players, but this is the point where maybe what do you say? With time for counting when the dealing's done. We're almost done the dealing here this weekend. And by the way, they can deal the Yankees out of first place, which is kind of interesting, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's across Major League Baseball, it's an incredible final weekend when you look at the Yankees and Blue Jays, when you look at Cleveland and Detroit, which, I mean, the Guardians with this historic comeback, when you look at
That's
where they
Red
were.
Sox Yankees 78, right?
I mean, this is throw in it whichever one you want to. I mean, the New
Phillies
York
1960, right?
the New York Giants against the Brooklyn Dodgers in 51. I mean, they were 15 and a half back on July 8th. They were 8 games under 500 on July 6th, I think it was. I mean, you think about where they stood at that point, and yeah, the Orioles had fallen further below 500, which led to Brandon Hyde's dismissal in mid-May. But when you just look in terms of the standings and you think about what we viewed the Tigers as being for most of this 2025 season, being the best team in the American League, or at least being very close to, in that conversation, and to see how they've fallen apart, to see what Cleveland has done. I have an MLB TV subscription where you can catch all the games, and I've been able to catch a few innings here and there with that series that just finished up. But I mean, it's the drama's great, and especially in these cases, like it's one thing to talk about Yankees, Blue Jays. Both teams are going to be in the postseason. Now we know the difference between having a first round bye and then being a wild card is vastly
You might want to
different.
play Monday and Tuesday.
Sure, but at the same time, you think about the consequences that if you are playing, right away, and what that means for your pitching, depending on how you use it over the weekend. But in the case of this Cleveland, this Cleveland Detroit race, and then you have Houston fighting for that last wild card as well. I mean, whichever team doesn't win that division, there's still a chance they could miss the playoffs entirely.
Like the
So,
Mets.
yeah, I mean, right. I mean, so yeah, and you still have, like you mentioned, alluded to that last wild card spot in the NL, but got some really fun races here. So, yeah, here locally, I mean, the Orioles have a chance to play spoiler, I mean, and that's fun, and Rodgers and Bradish are going to pitch two of these 3 games, so they're going to kind of give the Yankees, put their best foot forward, at least as much as they can at this point in the season. But a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun for the home finale on Thursday. To your point, not many people in the building, and I can't blame anyone for a Thursday afternoon game, but you get the walk off from Dylan Beavers. Kobe Mayo hit a home run. Mayo's quietly had an excellent September. He's been their best hitter in the month of September. Is that enough to fully commit an everyday job to him next spring? That's highly debatable, but certainly has been good to see those two take in the case of Beavers, hit the ground running from the moment he arrived. In the case of Mayo, look much better in September than he did in August. That's an understatement, but you said it. I mean, the rest of the young core, Tony Mansolino even acknowledged it again
I
on
went through the
Thursday.
bubblegum card the other day, and it's like,
It's not good.
well, I mean,
Not
even
good.
if you want to talk about Mayo having a good month or whatever, I look around, I'm like, Holiday's got more home runs than Henderson, which isn't good for
They don't
him.
have a
Or
20 home run guy. I mean, like, think about that. That in the history of the franchise, even some of their worst teams, generally speaking, had a couple guys that hit 20 to 25 home
Mark
runs.
Reynolds.
Yeah.
Dude,
I
I
mean,
could go.
so
It's been such a bad here the last 30 years. I could give you some names, but yes.
yeah, no question. So, and look, I mean, home runs aren't everything. Believe me, I've had enough people tell me, "Oh, the Orioles are too reliant on the home run at different times over the last 10 to 15 years. And I don't necessarily disagree, but when you look at that alone, you look at the strikeout numbers that they've had down the stretch, there's a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about it. It's why I'll continue to say they need fresh eyes and some fresh ideas coming into this organization. It doesn't mean every single person needs to go, but they need some meaningful change as well. But that said, I have really liked what I've seen from Dylan Beavers. He brings something that's different to the table from the rest of these guys. I'm not saying he's necessarily going to be a guy that hits 30 home runs or anything like that,
Be the
but
craziest thing if he's the guy that winds up being here for 10 years because
oh,
he's the guy we heard the least about.
yeah, but it's not like he was. I mean, it's not like he was a stiff. I mean, it's not like he was a 11th round pick or anything like that. But you're right. I mean, he wasn't a first round pick, but I mean, the thing I love about him, he's got a walk rate around 19%. I mean, this is a guy who's profiling, fully acknowledging it's been 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks of baseball for him, but he looks like the kind of guy that could walk 80 or 90 times a year. I mean, if he does that, then he's my leadoff hitter. I'll tell you that. So that's been good to see. But, in a year where there's been so much disappointment from that young position core, when you're talking about, all the way up from Gunnar Henderson losing his ability to hit the ball in the air and drive the ball out of the ballpark, even though he's still had a really solid year overall, in a vacuum, all the way down to Adley Rutschman and where the heck he is right now. The fact that Colton Cowser is hitting around the Mendoza line and has for most of the second half of the
Hauser might have been
season.
the worst year of all of them when I look at the back of the
Yeah,
bubblegum
it's
card.
disappointing. I mean, it is. And I mean, you and I kind of used him as like the case study. It kind of became a bit that we did. But I mean, he's had an extremely disappointing year.
Well,
I mean,
his
two
value to
months
be
ago,
dealt last offseason versus this offseason, it's just a tremendous thing. Not saying that I'm looking to deal everybody, but
yeah,
Elias is. Elias is looking to get, squeeze all the ripeness out of every fruit that he has there before he has to pay it. And that's going to be the way this franchise is going to operate, I'm pretty sure, based on what I've seen with Rubenstein and what I've
oh,
seen just in general. By the way, did you see that he got picketed the other day?
who, Rubenstein?
Mm-hmm.
I did not.
Rubenstein and Glenn Youngkin were doing something,
Oh.
and Wes Moore was there.
Sorry, I cover two sports teams. I don't have time for
Wes
politics.
Moore, well, the governor of Maryland and the governor of Virginia were sitting, and there was a young, um, outspoken group that infiltrated a billionaire luncheon. And you can go on my Facebook and see it. And they were doing shtick. They're doing it's very political, we have a camera on us, very performative. But it was about Rubenstein wrecking Alaska, basically, in regard to his money and in regard to fossil fuels and in regard to what he says he is and what he is. So, Rubenstein's got that going on too. And, well, billionaires, you got their nose into everything, right? But I saw that was happening for him in the offseason. And I think about Elias, and Elias is now the chosen one, which can like it, dislike it. He got the team in the first place 2 years ago. I'm not going to call Elias the village idiot, but it's going to take a real effort here of money, intention, people, all of that. I saw attendance was down 500,000 people this year, right?
Yeah,
That's not a small thing.
not a small thing, but also not a surprise when you talk about how incredibly disappointing the season was and where the absolute worst moments were in the first 7 weeks of the season, right? The first 8 weeks of the season. The season was shot by Memorial Day weekend, right? I mean, if you collapse in August and September, you might have the same record, but at least people had hope from April through July, right? Whereas this team had no hope from the time they, you know, I mean, I think back to what it was Easter Sunday when they had that colossal loss to the Reds, where they gave up 20 plus runs. So, that's really early in the season. I mean, all the injuries they had early on certainly didn't help either. But they've got a lot of work to do. I mean, that's the Captain Obvious statement.
500,000 tickets. If it's worth $50 a throw, you're talking about
Oh,
$25
it's a lot
million
of less
dollars.
revenue, lost revenue, no question. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they proceed based on that. I mean, okay, if you're going to play it by the books, then yeah, don't spend money. Then see how far attendance drops next year, then too, right? I mean,
Well, this is where
so
that Arrighetti comes in because
sure.
he's really running things. The David Rubenstein is just the front guy. Katie Griggs, these people are going to be hiding off season. I mean, like if I speak of them with spit on my breath, it's because they're a last place team. We don't have anything good to say about them other than the two pitchers coming to life the last 6 weeks. We don't really have any. I don't have any great news report. Basayo got signed, then he got hit. Gunnar Henderson, I don't know if this is what he's going to be next year and the year after that and the year after that. It's not good enough. It's not good enough to be where they want to be. I don't know what they have that is good enough right now, including their disposition and their reputation and the way they treat people and their pricing and the way they have shit upon everyone who's an Oriole fan, just in regard to how much money they're going to have to pay to be an Oriole fan next year. So there's my. I'm not angry at the Ravens this week, even though they might be 1-3 on Monday. They might be 2-2 on Monday. I don't know, but when it comes to the Orioles, honestly, I don't defecate upon them enough. I mean, honestly, there really isn't.
Okay,
There really isn't.
you do it quite a bit. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't reasons to, but anyway, go ahead. Sorry, I was just trying to bring a little.
They've been a last place team all year. Like I don't. I'm
I know.
trying, honest to God, dude. If I'm gonna be a prick, I'll be a prick. Here, I'm a prick. Okay, it's off season. What do they do well? Go.
They have Trevor Rogers, they have Kyle Bradish, they have Gunnar Henderson, who at at least at maybe not as much this year, but has been an MVP candidate for a half of a season before, has certainly been an all-star caliber shortstop for 3 years now, and that even includes this year. They have Jordan Westberg, who certainly did not stay on the field this year, but was an all-star infielder last year. They have Adley Rutschman, who I don't know what's happened to him over the last 14 months, but was a two-time All-Star catcher. Then he's not 35 years old, so you'd
What
like
you're
to think
telling me
there's
now is that they were in last place a bunch and got a bunch of 1-1s, and they're still crossing their fingers because that's really where they are right now.
sure.
That's really
I'm
where they
not
are.
I'm not going to sit here and paint like this extraordinarily rosy picture. I'm also not going
And
to
by
sit
the
here
way,
and
you mentioned players. I'm saying, what do they do well? What does the ownership, the leadership,
the
the
ownership's
baseball
done nothing to
people,
this point.
what do they do well? What do they do to inspire any confidence that this will be different next year? I don't know. Unless you really believe in Mike Elias and you really believe they're going to throw $100 million at this in the offseason, right? That they're really going to add payroll, add people that isn't whatever the right fielder's name is, and I don't even remember. The Canadian kid. He didn't play enough to even remember his name. Muscles. I'll just call him
Tyler
Muscles.
O'Neill.
Yeah, him. There you go. Didn't play enough for me to even know his name. And I'm not that's not even
Oh, he's been around baseball for quite a
I know,
while, but
I
yeah.
know.
I
Yeah.
mean, let's.
Peter King gave me the scouting report on him in the offseason.
Oh, and I'm
Peter King sent me a text and
in a
said
wild
he'll hit
disappointment.
30
I'm not
home
going to sit
runs,
here
he'll
and
play
defend him.
80 games, and he'll hit
I mean, it's
212.
well, but even that outcome's been even worse than anyone, that than you reasonably could have expected. I mean, he's played what 50 games, right? I mean, even if he played 100 games, we'd still say that's not enough, but he would have had twice the production,
He's the
in
biggest
theory.
investment of Mr. Rubenstein's
Sure,
money
sure,
so
sure.
far.
Well, I guess technically Samuel Basayo now, but even that, you're really truly talking about 2 years of 3 years of free agency being bought out, or 2 years, I guess. So no, they've got a lot of work to do. I'm not gonna sit here and paint this extraordinarily rosy picture. Um, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and go over Mike Elias's entire resume that goes back to the fall of 2018. They did a lot of things to rebuild the organization and put them in a position where they actually signed international players. One of them has arrived in the majors, and they've even extended in Basayo. He's young. He's not this established guy just yet by any stretch of the imagination. They've had a farm system that has produced major league talent. They've found a way to, have some reclamation projects in the bullpen that have panned out over the better part of the last 3 to 4 years.
Dude, I'll tell you
Uh,
what, with Bradish and Rogers, if they didn't bloom as we sat here July 15th, we would have nothing. You know what I mean? Like crossing fingers
Gunnar
doesn't.
Henderson's not nothing, man.
No, no, no. I mean, we'd have nothing
Oh,
right
you mean,
now at the end of the year. Gunnar Henderson had a lousy year for Gunnar Henderson, or for anyone who thinks he's Gunnar Henderson, or anyone who thinks he's getting $500 million. So I don't even want to like that.
still
Like
more than a 5-win player, but go ahead.
all that's fine. It better be better than this. It better be it better. We better
Okay.
squeeze
I,
more
I
out of it this
agree.
year.
But to say
This
he's
better
had a
be his
lousy
worst year
season is just kind of hilarious. But
for him.
anyway,
For him.
okay.
Ask him about his season and his expectations back in March versus where he is.
A
For all of it.
a lousy season is what Colton Cowser is doing.
Okay, fair enough. You're right.
No, Gunner's talked about it. He needs to get his swing has not had the lift to hit the ball out of the ballpark. That said, he still has 33 doubles, 5 triples, 16 home runs. He has 29 stolen bases. He still has a 783 OPS. Now, am I disappointed by that? Of course I am. But I'm also not going to sit here and say it's been a lousy season. It's been disappointing. There's no question about that. And I'll still say that probably going back, I'm guessing having the intercostal rib issue or whatever in spring training probably impacted his strength, might have impacted his
Oh,
swing,
here's where we
and then
go
you
with
just don't get on
excuses.
track.
If I were, if I had to have this conversation with Rob Long or Rock Kabaka, they'd have to be kayfabe on how they speak about their own players. But that's part of the issue is that I think at the end of this, um, if you gave Brandon Hyde the serum test, the truth test, he'd say, "Well, everybody got hurt, and that got me fired. We're in last place because everybody got hurt and pitching, and we
I
didn't."
mean, injuries were a big part of
They
it. I'm
were
not,
part of it. That's fine.
don't say I'm Mr. Masson saying that because that's
No,
the
no,
truth.
no.
I
I'm
mean,
saying if I
have,
were arguing
but
with them,
no, it's not
the
the only
first
reason.
story of
No,
the of this season, when you look and say, how the hell did that happen? You'd say, well, they got hurt. That's part of it. That's
I
not
would
all of it.
I would say, if you wanted me to say they had a poor offseason in terms of their starting pitching, and they put way too much reliance on their young core when Tyler O'Neill and let's also be in the interest of fairness. Ramon Laureano was a fantastic pickup, but when those are your big moves to augment your young offense, when you said goodbye to Anthony Santander and you kind of knew where you were with some of the other veteran guys that were kind of on their way out.
And you knew Burns was leaving.
Um, it was a poor offseason on that front. Their starting pitching is what absolutely killed them early in the season. And their young core has been a wild disappointment collectively, right? And from Gunnar Henderson's relative disappointment all the way down
They don't
to
have one player that I look at other than Rogers and say, all right, I want more of that. I want exactly that, more of that. That's going to be good enough. That's going to make the bell ring. And that doesn't mean Mayo over 3 weeks or Cowser over his best 3 weeks or Henderson 2 years ago or Rutschman 3 years ago or any of that. It's collectively all of it has really stunk this year. From the ownership through the leadership, through Mark Fine,
no,
through the attendance, through the television, through just all the way through. Just all I can't think of one thing they're good at. Except bullshitting the people that already still go, and they've screwed that up by sending people. People are angry. I'm not the angry one on Twitter, dude.
I
I
know
read Twitter.
people are
I'm
very
quiet
upset.
on
I
Twitter.
understand it.
Everyone's pissed at them. Now, whether that's going to hold and whether they're going to get money from people who've been giving them money, or whether what I'm seeing on my timeline this week, and I mean this, dozens of people on my timeline saying, well, this is the end of my season ticket run with the
Yeah.
Orioles. This is the end of my 13 game plan, my 20, whatever. I'm done. Next year, I'm going to go as I go. And you know what? They start 2-10 and 5-14 and 7-18 and whatever. If they start bad, I don't know where they go from losing 500,000 people in attendance to next year. What the excuse would be if they're a third place team that's a 500 team. that's just okay, but not great, not good, not in it. I the jump back to 101 wins with this outfit right now, we're not going to be talking about them the next 5 months the way we talked about them the 5 months last year, despite the outcome in the playoffs last year, because you can't sell me on it, Luke. I'm going to be the angry prick all off season when you start to Gunnar Henderson and Anthony Richmond and all the names that we've had for the last 5 years. They don't mean the same thing to me. Now, Trevor Rogers means something different. Bradish, he's always been your guy. We've been waiting for him
Gunnar
to come
Henderson should
back.
still mean a lot to you. I mean, like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to continue to just sit here and act like Gunnar Henderson stinks.
No,
I
he's
mean,
going to get his 650 at bats next year, and you're going to pencil him
but
in
I
for
agree with you.
34 home runs. You're going to pencil him in for 34 home runs and 110 RBIs because that's what it's going to take, right? It's going to take
Yeah,
33 more doubles.
sure.
It's going to take all of that. And I'm going to say to you, until further notice, he's Nick Markakis.
Yes,
I
because
see the next thing.
I guess because the two previous years don't count at all.
They
Right?
count
We
a
only
lot.
go off.
Let's bring them back.
I'm just saying. I'll still go with
This is what have you done for me lately for all
Of
of them
course
because
it
it's
is,
been a
but
body of work.
of course it is. But he has a body of work that was much better 2 years prior to that.
I'm not
So
trading Gunnar Henderson, but
yeah,
this isn't the offseason I'm offering him 500 million either, and fans aren't going to get him
probably not going to
signed.
take it even if you offer that.
Right, exactly.
Because in all honesty,
He
I
thinks
think
he's hitting 45 next year.
well,
That's
I
good.
think part of it would also be he probably wants to see the direction of the organization just as much as anyone else.
Aha.
I
We're at
mean, if
that
we're
point, are we? We're at the Machado point of I might not want to be here. That's
uh,
true.
I mean, could you blame him?
Well, this time last year you wouldn't have said that. This
And,
time last year you wouldn't have said that. This time
sure.
last year, they're the Cardinals. Like they have destroyed this thing in 6 months for the way even I could talk optimistically about maybe getting my press pass back and going back again. I'm not talking like that anymore. I think these people are incompetent. I think that they're not good people. I think that the wrong people have bought the
Then
team
I
the
guess there's
second
no hope.
time. And well, I
I
don't.
mean, I'm just
I'm
saying.
not
I
going to
mean,
be the guy to sell it. Let Rock Kabako sell it. Let Rob Long sell it. They're paying him to sell it. I'm not selling it because I don't see it. Because I don't believe it. Because I don't believe it. I believed it last year, so I sold it. Even though they'll forget that I praised them and they'll forget how they locked me out of the playoff game I flew 2,000 miles to get to. Right. So I was on their train when they sucked. I was on their train when they're good. I'm on their train in the offseason, but I'm not lying to my people. And I'm not lying about what my eyes have seen this year. My eyes have seen incompetent people. David Rubenstein, Michael Arrighetti, Katie Greggs. I see people who don't know what they're doing. That's what I see. That's my observation. On the baseball side, I don't know how committed the ownership is to really being committed. They're committed
that's
to
fair.
having their kids in the hot dog races and running around. They're committed to, I've gained so many autographs, my arms hurts. And look at my bobblehead. Isn't it awesome? They're committed to that. I don't think they're committed to baseball, dude. I'm being honest with you. I mean, this is 2 years into this now. They're not committed. They're committed to being famous and using their money for a toy and saying it's a philanthropy. That's ownership. Now, what that means to Gunnar Henderson's offseason or Adley Rutschman or Jackson Holliday with his parents out hitting baseballs in his house and in the offseason, how strong he's going to get and how much better. I will buy that Henderson, Holliday. I'm not buying Cowser. I'm not buying Mayo yet. I'm not buying anybody with holes in his swing. And that's most of these guys who strike out a lot. And because that, to me, I don't know, you don't hit the ball. That's me being an old guy, get off my lawn then. You'll laugh at me for that. But
Just saying, most people around baseball strike out, but I hear you. I hear. Hey, they've struck out way too much in the second half. I'm not, or especially down the stretch when it was kind of like, hey, let's, O'Hearn's gone, Mullins is gone, Laureano's gone. All right, Ramon Arias is gone. Young court. It's been disappointing. Been last in baseball in runs scored since the trade deadline. I'm not going to sit here and excuse that. I'm not going to sit here and say that it can't and won't be better next year, but they've got a heck of a lot of work to do. There's no question about it. That's why, to me, you need fresh eyes. I I actually, to be totally honest, I think more of Tony Mansolino now than I did 2 months ago, but not
but
enough
not
to
enough.
not enough to
Right,
make him
right,
the
right. Yeah.
permanent manager. I I I think for anyone who's paid attention on a daily basis, and God bless if you have, because it hasn't been easy. Although I will point out, and amidst all the negativity, go look at what their record is in September. They've actually played some pretty decent baseball. They pitched. That's kind of been what's crazy
Well, if
about it.
this were a
It's
home
confounding.
weekend, they would be
And
looking
and
to knock
and
the
of
Yankees out
course,
of the playoffs. So
right.
they have an opportunity before Monday to be.
Sure. And again, it's September, and I'll go back to Buck Showalter 15 years ago saying, spring training in September can be great foolers. So I'm not going to sit here and, I'm not throwing them a parade. Let's be clear. But they have won some games in September. There have been some good things to see. There have been a lot of things that have still been really disappointing. I mean, Jordan Westberg's come off the IL and hasn't hit at all the last, 10 days or whatever it is. It's 10 days, but, you're kind of hoping to finish on a high note. I mean, Adley Rutschman's back. He's only been a couple games, so I'm not judging one way or the other. But I mean, you're at a point now with him. What's his future?
Yeah, the organization's catcher position's weird, right? With like how we're going to slice that up next year. Who's going to catch and when and why, and
Yeah,
who's going to look the way they need to look in March. I mean, spring training's going to be a
sure,
big deal for this team all of a sudden, right?
sure, no question. I mean, especially hoping that they've made some meaningful additions. I mean, they need that, right? I'll
Oh,
continue to
Gauser,
say,
it's 175 in spring training. Dude, go to Norfolk and hit a bit. I
I
mean,
mean,
like literally. I mean, there's some guys here. They have not earned opening day. I'll see Holiday and Rutch and I'll see Holiday and Henderson here next year. You know, I guess Westberg on reputation alone. But the rest of these guys. I mean, what you're going to give Kobe Mayo opening day at bats? Is he absolutely? I don't know. I don't know
oh,
if
I
any
mean,
of these
I
guys are.
think, I think, I think Mayo is one of the more fascinating individuals of their offseason because, he's had I'll pull it up as I'm talking here, but let's face it. I mean, he has failed and struggled far more than he has thrived over his first, 350 plate appearances in the major leagues. Now, in fair or 330 plate appearances in the major leagues going into the final weekend now. That's been splintered, that's been kind of broken up. That was his cup of coffee last year when he didn't play a whole lot. And when he came in and played, it's kind of like he's starting twice a week or
Most of
something
the
like
cups of
that.
coffee never go well, which is
Yeah,
what makes this
but
fever
that's where
thing so interesting. Yeah.
sure, but that's where you look at Mayo. At the trade deadline, one of the silver linings was all right. He's going to play every day. He was absolutely awful in August, but he's been excellent in September. Look at his slash line in September. He's hit 300. He's hit for some power. He's drawn some walks. It's looked way better. I mean,
Well, something more that profiles the way Norfolk did for him.
sure. So I know he's put in the work. I mean, it's interesting. And I know we were talking about Mayo, but Dylan Beavers was asked after he hit his walk off on Thursday, what he's learned from his first 6 weeks in the majors, like what stood out, what has been his impression compared to what he might have dreamt the major leagues being. And I'm going to read his quote because honestly, it's what a lot of these guys are dealing with. And I don't say this like in a boo-hoo for them, like it's JV baseball way, but it's just the reality of it. His quote was, "It's hard up here. You're never going to have an at bat that's comfortable, especially when it's not going good. That's when it really gets challenging. It's just remaining confident and trusting my process and preparation. I think that will ultimately lead to success here." I mean, that's the theme for so many of these guys right now, right? I mean, even Gunnar
Sounds like
Henderson,
Sig
who
Meidel wrote that down for him, right?
I mean,
Literally.
no,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I
that's
think
the answer that as a fan, I like that
oh
answer.
yeah,
It's a
right. I
mature
mean,
answer.
it's a mature answer, and look, it is really I say this all the time, and I don't say this because I quote know more than the average fan. There are plenty of baseball fans out there who know even more than I do when you talk about getting into the weeds on statistics or different things like that. But what my biggest takeaway in my 15 years, covering baseball, and I'll say this for the NFL as well, is when you're up close to it, you have an appreciation for just how difficult it actually is, just how even the worst player in baseball or the last player on the Ravens practice squad, just how incredibly special these athletes are, just in a general sense, to get to that point, let alone to get to that point and have success the way that the very best, the Lamar Jacksons, which Lamar's, as unique as they come, but, a Gunnar Henderson having the success he's had. But like when you hear someone who's even had success over the last 6 weeks, who has been kind of the exception, not the norm as far as their young players when they've been called up, where, Beavers has scuffled the last couple weeks, but, still has over an 800 OPS. He's got a walk rate that's excellent. He's got an on base percentage that has me thinking, I kind of see him being a better fit for the leadoff spot than Jackson Holiday. And that's more a compliment to Beavers than a knock on Holiday. But, to hear him say that, I mean, it reminds that, these guys, they go through college or high school ball and they get drafted where they do. They go through the minors. Most of them just tear it up at every level. And you get to the majors and it's like everyone else is really good too. Like everyone else is the best of the best. All those guys were great in the minor leagues too. And it's just, yeah, I think there's, we've talked about this. That's why I think it's important for them to hire a manager that has some cachet, that has some experience. Someone that, it's not, obviously it's not Buck Showalter himself, but someone who brings something like that, that, maybe, commands a little more credibility, but also has a little more credibility, not just in terms of demanding better from these guys, but maybe can, be relatable in a different way that, that when they need an arm put around them, it's like, hey, it's going to be all right, So I don't know. I think there's
They're
absolutely
not hiring Jim Leland or Tony La Russa
yeah.
or, like that's over with. I don't know.
And honestly, like
Espada's name was the guy that they threw around the last time when they hired Brandon Hyde, right? So
I mean, I think, and for me, that's a big part of, with the managerial hire, we're going to find out if Mike Elias has learned anything from what's happened the last couple years. Is it going to be, it doesn't necessarily have to be the guy out there that has the absolute most major league managerial experience. They could hire Skip Schumacher, who was a manager of the year the same year Brandon Hyde was. Um, does he carry a Buck Showalter like factor? No, not really, but would be someone that it's like, hey, we hired a legit manager. This isn't just some unknown, right? It's not just a promotion from within, and I don't say that to bash Brandon Hyde or to bash Tony Mansolino, but there's a human element to all of this that I think they've really shortchanged. And I don't think that's the leading factor. I think the leading factor is that these guys have just struggled and not performed. And we can talk about, player development and what they emphasize, or we could talk about the mental part of it, or we could talk about guys not being healthy or guys not being in the best condition, causing them not to be healthy, right? I mean, there's never just one thing. We know that, right? I mean, even though we try to break it down in such lowest common denominator form a lot of times in sports talk, but they need someone that's. I thought it's funny. I went back and I don't want to go off on a tangent too much here, but I went back and I found something written the day that Buck Showalter was introduced. Andy McPhail made the comment that we felt like our club needed an identity, and we think Buck Showalter can bring that for us. Now, the Orioles did not win the World Series or have a dynasty under Buck Showalter. But boy, did that come to fruition in terms of an identity for that core over the next 5 or 6 years, which included 3 playoff appearances. Now, again,
it's a confidence level for the fan base,
sure,
for their sponsors,
and
for
that's
their players,
yeah,
for everyone.
and think about Buck. Think about him being introduced at the Savannah Bananas game and the incredible, extraordinary ovation he got. The ovation he got when he was the one who introduced Adam Jones going into the Hall of Fame back in August.
Well, he's one of the few things that brought any respect to this organization over 30 years. Over 30 years.
And let's be clear, it's not like Buck had these great ties to Baltimore before he arrived. He was known most as being, he was the Yankees manager. He was the Rangers manager.
He was the guy from Seinfeld.
He started, right, exactly. So, again, it's not that it has to be that dynamic of a personality. For one, I don't think they'll hire someone that would not really align necessarily with analytics and things like that, which Buck really didn't.
Well, Buck needed a gig at that point. He had been on TV.
Sure.
He was desperate for a job.
Sure.
No one in the world was going to hire Buck. Buck was thought to be prickly and hard to get along
Think
with.
about it. They
did it his own way and like all of
were
that.
interested in Bobby Valentine, right?
And Peter Angelos was thought to be, why would Buck work for that guy? like at that moment. So it was shocking that Buck showed up, and Buck got talked into it by McPhail because McPhail talked Buck into the old man's going to let me leave me alone. And for the most part, that's the way it rolled. I mean, by that point, Peter was out eating pudding and done with being a tyrant at that point. And then was really never heard from again. You ran into him in the locker room that day after the Yankees game at 14, and that was the end. That was 12 actually, right?
12.
It was
12.
12.
Yeah, the division
Yeah, it was
series
a
in
long,
12.
long time ago. So it
Yeah,
was never heard from again. So it was different in that era
it was.
because they couldn't hire anyone because no one wanted to work for that jerk. So, like in a general sense, there are many, many, many qualified people that just said that's North Korea. I'm not taking a job there. In the same way that I wouldn't take live money from the Saudi Arabian government. So, I would say in this case, they don't have that reputation. They
Yeah,
don't have that going on. They could hire Joe Torre or Tony LaRue. They can hire anybody they want because they don't have to go through the list of who won't work here, which was
yeah,
30 years of that. I mean,
sure.
really. I mean,
Well,
Mark Teixeira would not play here no matter what. So they couldn't. They just couldn't get players. They couldn't get coaches. They don't have that problem anymore. They
they
can
shouldn't.
shop
Yeah,
top shelf. They can buy a real manager. They can deal for real players. They have real minor league talent like Colton Cowser that they could deal off here in the and Adley Rutschman. Those high draft picks they could get some value for if they want to go in that direction. If they're done with some of these guys, because there's definitely a feeling in the fan base of if they traded Adley Rutschman on January the 10th, we'd all scratch our heads and say, what did they get for him? Did we give up on him too early? Did they fail in getting him to where he needed to be as an organization? I don't know. I mean, dealing any of the names of
yeah.
all of these names that we've thrown out, they still all feel so young to me. But in baseball terms,
I mean,
Adley
Adley Rut.
Rutschman ain't a 1-1 anymore. Adley Rutschman is a failed prospect right now, based on the
Yeah,
back of his bubblegum card.
I mean, not failed in the sense that he was a two-time All-Star, but it's like, what has happened the last 14
Who's
months?
giving you anything for him, and what are
You
you
know,
getting for him, and what's that
I
going
mean,
to
I,
turn
I
you?
mean, I don't think his value's none by any stretch of the imagination. That said, would you be trading him at peak value? Of course not.
Nobody's going to build an
And I would
organization around
I would
him.
also say, I mean, at the same time, let's also not be hasty from the standpoint of what are you doing at the catcher position then, right? I mean, okay, you just drafted two guys, drafted one pure catcher in the first round this past draft, but Ike Irish probably going to profile a little more like Basayo, right, where he'll catch, but also you know play, he plays some right field, he's kind of almost like a BJ Surhoff kind of guy in that way, but 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 the fact that we're even having the discussion speaks to how disappointing he's been going back to July of last year, right? So, I mean, for him, get healthy. I mean, when you have an oblique injury on either side, it tells me you're not in peak condition or you're over swinging, and we've kind of seen that, with the dramatic uppercut and how he started hitting the long ball more first half of last year, and how I think that had a negative impact on his overall offensive profile.
Well, he was taking
Um,
less pitches.
so yeah, I mean the walk
Yeah.
rate dropped in the process. So look, they've got a heck of a lot, and obviously I push back on some of your criticisms, but it's a heck of a lot that they have to do this offseason. They've got to spend money. They've got to be smart. Uh, as much as I love Rogers and Bradish in my top half of the rotation, they need at least one more high impact starting pitcher and probably another guy to fill out the back end of the rotation. You absolutely need a legitimate everyday caliber outfielder. I think even with my praise for Kobe Mayo for how he's played in September, I'm not ready to hand him the everyday first baseman job. So maybe it becomes Kobe Mayo ends up being the guy that's dealt with the full understanding that I think there's a good chance he's going to blossom into a really nice major league hitter. But when you look at the timeline for that, Chris Davis didn't really blossom and become Chris Davis. And I mean him at his peak until like age 25 or 26. Kobe Mayo's 23. If it were 2021, sure, trot him out there every day. But this team has 3 years of Gunnar Henderson left, club control of Gunnar Henderson left. And there's a work stoppage likely in the midst of that, whether it's going to cost games or at least the entirety of an
Well, we went
offseason, most
45
likely.
minutes in this when we finally mentioned the fact that they probably aren't going to have a World Series next year, right? So
So, well, not next year. No, it'd be the year after that. It's after 2026.
next year is going to be a contentious year if they don't
No,
figure it
but I'm
out.
just saying the work stoppage is, the CBA expires at the end of next year. There'll be a World Series next year. Now, the year after that is the question. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be done. Look, they spent $72 million last winter on free agents. Didn't spend it well. So for me, yeah, of course they have to spend money. How much money are they going to spend? That remains to be seen, but they have to spend it more wisely than they did this past year. So yeah, they've got a lot of work to do. But I'll bring it full circle and I'll leave you with this last point. A lot of that is the young core needs to look themselves in the mirror. What are you going to do to get better? Because this hasn't been good enough. And yeah, I'll throw Gunner in there, even though, like I said, I'll stick up for him in terms of how his season's been described, but it's certainly been disappointing. There's no question about that. But at the same time, you have other guys that you're starting to question if they're everyday players. Colton Cowser was second in Rookie of the Year last year. This year, he's looking more like a platoon guy or fourth outfielder. You know, that's not what you were looking for from the fifth overall pick in
All-star is what you're looking
2021.
for there, right?
Yeah. So just give me above average player, like dependable, more consistent, everyday contributors,
All
right?
right. Well, they're going to go for the next 4 months, go off and pray and lift weights and drink milk and eat cookies and do all the things that they should be doing in the off season, try not to get themselves arrested, like all of that, and come back. And everybody in the place is going to need to be better. We'll agree with that, right? Including Michael
1000%.
Elias.
I,
Yeah,
I don't know if you can expect Trevor Rogers to be better than a
fair
1.35
enough.
ERA, but he needs to pick up where he left off in terms of looking like a guy that's a number one or number two starter. Same for Kyle Bradish.
All right, football ahead. We're done with baseball. You can call Katie and call Mr. Rubenstein and tell him I'm the jerk that I always was, especially when the team's in last place and doesn't feel like there's any hope in the offseason. And especially, and this is I'll leave it with this. It's nice to be important, but it's so much more important to be nice. I'm Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking. Baltimore Ravens football. Let's get to 2-2.